October 14th, 1998. 11:43. A small kitchen in a two-bedroom apartment, light humming above the sink. The chair is too big for him, his feet don't touch the floor. Across the table, his mother's hands are trembling. A stack of unopened envelopes lies between them like something radioactive. The television in the living room is still on, voices from a late-night sitcom rising and falling in artificial laughter. But in this room, no one is laughing. He watches her carefully, not like a child watches a parent but like a medic studies a patient, breathing shallow, eyes unfocused, jaw tight. He has seen this before. He knows what comes next. The silence stretches, the refrigerator clicks on, a car passes outside. And then she says it. "I don't know what we're going to do." Not to him, not exactly. The words drift into the air, but they land on him all the same. You can almost feel the shift in the room. Something invisible changes hands. He straightens in the chair. He tells her it will be okay. He doesn't know how, he doesn't know why, but his voice is steady, measured, reassuring. In that moment, something ancient inside him makes a decision. From a Jungian perspective, this is the birth of a persona, a mask shaped not by vanity but by necessity. The psyche, sensing instability, crafts an identity designed to preserve order, composed, reliable, watchful. He is 8 years old. And he does not cry. There is no ceremony when innocence is exchanged for responsibility, no trumpet, no declaration. It happens in kitchens, in hospital waiting rooms, in the backseats of cars parked outside dark houses. It happens when a child realizes that the adults are no longer holding the sky up. And someone has to. He begins waking earlier, making his own lunch, checking the mailbox before his mother sees it, listening for the tone of her footsteps down the hallway. Hyperawareness becomes instinct. He learns the weather patterns of emotion, the low-pressure systems before a storm. He knows when to stay quiet, when to make a joke, when to disappear. At school, teachers call him mature for his age. They say it like a compliment. He says thank you. But maturity at that age is often camouflage. Carl Jung believed the persona forms as a bridge between the individual and the outer world. In healthy development, it grows gradually, flexible, adaptable, but when forged too early, it hardens. It becomes armor. And armor, once fused to the skin, is not easily removed. Years pass. He becomes dependable, the friend who drives everyone home, the teenager who doesn't cause trouble, the one teachers trust with responsibility. Inside, spontaneity begins to feel foreign. He studies faces before speaking, calculates responses, anticipates disappointment before it arrives. His nervous system does not rest. Even in moments of calm, something inside him stays alert. Watching. Waiting. Because when you grow up in emotional instability, peace feels temporary, fragile, suspicious. You learn that joy can vanish mid-sentence. So you stay prepared. By 17, he knows how to regulate a room. If tension rises, he lowers his voice. If conflict sparks, he mediates. If someone cries, he absorbs it. This is not empathy in its purest form. It is survival refined into skill. From the outside, he looks impressive, steady, grounded, strong. Inside, there is an unnamed fatigue. Because he has been carrying something that was never meant for his hands. A child can hold responsibility. But the psyche keeps the receipt. Jungian psychology suggests that whatever is exiled from consciousness does not disappear, it waits. The playful self, the reckless self, the self that wanted to be held instead of holding. It does not die. It goes underground. And underground things do not age the same way we do. They remain suspended, 8 years old, 11, 13. Waiting for a moment that never came. By his mid-20s, people admire his composure. He has learned to speak slowly, to choose words carefully, to anticipate outcomes before others see them. He is the emotional stabilizer in relationships. The calm one. The strong one. But sometimes, in the quiet after everyone has left the room, there is a strange, hollow feeling. Not sadness exactly. More like absence. Like a house where a door once existed, but has long since been sealed. He cannot name what is missing. He only knows that when others laugh freely, unguarded, uncalculated, something inside him feels distant. As if watching through glass. There is a cost to being the reliable one. When you are the stabilizer, no one asks if you need stabilizing. When you are composed, no one checks for fractures. And when you are mature beyond your years, people assume you skipped something cleanly. But development does not skip. It postpones. And postponement gathers interest. Late one night, years later, he sits alone in his apartment. The room is quiet, no television, no trembling hands across the table. Just the hum of another refrigerator. He feels tired. Not physically. Existentially. He has done everything right. So why does something feel unfinished? You can almost sense the question forming in him for the first time. What did I lose when I became the strong one? And more unsettling still. Is it still out there somewhere? Waiting. The question lingers longer than he expects. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't scream. It hums. In meetings at work, he speaks clearly, concisely. His manager praises his reliability, deadlines are met, crises are handled. He is the one people turn to when things fall apart. And they often do. He doesn't resent this. In fact, part of him feels most alive in emergency. When tension rises, his senses sharpen. Time slows, he becomes precise. Useful. But in stillness, real stillness, something unsettles him. Saturday afternoon, 2:17 p.m. sunlight through half-closed blinds. He sits on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, no notifications, no one needing him. The quiet should feel peaceful. Instead, it feels unfamiliar. You can almost feel the subtle agitation under his skin, like an engine idling too high. His body does not know how to exist without scanning. Because when vigilance becomes identity, rest feels like irresponsibility. In relationships, he is attentive. He remembers birthdays, notices shifts in tone, asks thoughtful questions. Partners describe him as safe, grounded, emotionally intelligent. But intimacy reveals something unexpected. When conflict arises, he manages it calmly. When emotions escalate, he regulates them, both theirs and his own. He does not raise his voice. He does not slam doors. He does not fall apart. And slowly something else happens. He does not fully arrive either. There is a pane of glass between him and the rawness of experience. He participates. But from a controlled distance. Because losing control once meant losing stability. And losing stability meant danger. Even if that danger was only emotional. From a Jungian perspective, the persona that forms in early responsibility is brilliant. It adapts to chaos with precision, it ensures survival, it earns admiration. But when the persona overdevelops, it begins to dominate the psyche. Other aspects, especially the childlike self, recede into shadow. Not because they are weak. Because they were impractical. Playfulness didn't pay bills. Vulnerability didn't calm adults. Spontaneity didn't prevent breakdowns. So they were quietly dismissed. Not violently. Efficiently. He begins to notice small things. A colleague tells a ridiculous joke in the break room. Everyone laughs loudly, bodies folding, faces unguarded. He smiles. But his laughter arrives a second late. Measured. As if asking permission. At a friend's birthday, someone suggests dancing. He hesitates. His body feels heavy, exposed. Dancing requires surrender to rhythm, to silliness, to imperfection. And imperfection once had consequences. So he declines politely. No one notices. That's the thing about competence. It hides the fracture lines. One evening, he visits his mother. She seems smaller now, softer, time has sanded the sharp edges. They sit at the same kitchen table. Different apartment, different year. But something in the air feels familiar. She thanks him casually for always being so strong back then. She says she doesn't know what she would have done without him. Her voice carries gratitude, pride, and something else. Regret. He nods, smiles, says it was nothing. But inside something shifts. Because he realizes something he never allowed himself to see. She needed a partner. He was a child. The room feels smaller. Not suffocating. Revealing. Carl Jung believed that what we suppress does not disappear, it organizes itself in the unconscious. The neglected parts of us do not dissolve, they wait for integration. But integration requires acknowledgement. And acknowledgement feels dangerous. Because if he admits he grew up too early, then he must face what he didn't receive. Protection. Care. The right to collapse without consequences. And that realization stirs something unfamiliar in him. Anger. Not explosive. Not loud. Quiet. Steady. Like a low-burning coal. Driving home that night, the city lights blur slightly through the windshield. He feels disoriented. Not because of anything dramatic. Because something subtle has cracked. He begins to see his life differently. The promotions. The praise. The stability. All real. All earned. But built upon a foundation poured too soon. He wonders not with self-pity, but with dawning curiosity. Who would I have been if I had been allowed to be small? The question doesn't weaken him. It destabilizes the narrative. And destabilization, though uncomfortable, is the beginning of something else. Back in his apartment, he stands in front of the bathroom mirror. Fluorescent light, neutral walls, ordinary moment. He studies his face. Composed. Predictable. Safe. And suddenly, behind the steadiness, he senses something younger. Not visible, but present. Like a figure standing just behind him, slightly out of focus. Watching. Waiting. He feels it in his chest, a tightness that isn't anxiety. A grief without story. For the first time, he does not push it away. He lets the silence expand. And in that silence, a realization forms. The part of him that never came back. Never left willingly. It adapted. It survived. But it never had a choice. And now, after decades of competence, it wants one. He doesn't sleep much that night. 3:12 a.m. The apartment is still, the city outside reduced to a distant hum, a siren somewhere far off, then nothing. He lies on his back, staring at the ceiling. For years, exhaustion meant productivity. Long days, controlled emotions, constant awareness, but this wakefulness feels different. It feels like something inside him has been stirred. Not violently. Awakened. You can almost sense it, the subtle rearranging of internal furniture, old assumptions shifting a few inches to the left. He turns onto his side. And without planning to, he remembers something small. A red bicycle. Training wheels still attached. Gravel driveway. He must have been 6. He remembers wanting to ride faster recklessly down the slight incline near the mailbox. His mother had been on the phone packing. He had looked back before pushing off. Checking. Even then. Even before the kitchen table. The memory lands softly, but it lands. Because he sees now what he couldn't see then. He was never fully inside his childhood. Part of him was always scanning the perimeter. Over the next few weeks, subtle cracks widen. At work, during a tense meeting, he feels the familiar shift, the instinct to regulate, to soothe, to absorb. But this time, something hesitates. A quiet internal voice asks, "Why is this mine to carry?" The question is almost disorienting. He still handles the situation well, calm, clear, effective. But afterward, instead of pride, he feels depletion. For the first time, competence feels heavy. Like lifting something he no longer believes belongs to him. From a Jungian perspective, this is the beginning of individuation, the slow differentiation between who we became to survive and who we are beneath that adaptation. Individuation is not rebellion. It is reclamation. But reclamation begins with grief. And grief does not always arrive with tears. Sometimes it arrives as irritability. As sudden fatigue. As an ache in the chest when watching children run freely in a park. He notices it one Sunday afternoon. A father is chasing his daughter through the grass, both laughing, uncalculated, unmonitored laughter. The sound hits him unexpectedly. He feels something tighten in his throat. Not jealousy. Recognition. There is a version of himself that never ran without checking who might fall. He begins to experiment in small ways. One evening, when a friend calls to vent, he listens, but does not immediately fix. He does not offer solutions. He lets silence exist. The discomfort is almost physical. His body wants to step in, stabilize, repair. But he resists. And something surprising happens. The world does not collapse. His friend navigates their own emotion. And he feels lighter. The realization is subtle but profound. He was not meant to hold everything. Another night alone, he plays music, not the curated, atmospheric kind he usually prefers. Something louder. Unstructured. He stands in the middle of his living room. Hesitates. Then moves. Awkward at first, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. But he keeps going. There is no audience, no one to stabilize. Just movement. It feels unfamiliar. Exposed. And then for a brief second, something breaks through. A flash of unfiltered energy, a careless spin, a breath that isn't measured. It disappears quickly. But it was there. The underground self surfacing for air. Carl Jung believed that the shadow is not only composed of dark impulses, but of neglected light, unrealized joy, creativity, instinct. The child who grew up too early does not become dark. He becomes contained. And containment, over decades, can resemble strength so convincingly that no one questions it. Not even him. Until now. The shift is not dramatic. There is no confrontation, no sudden collapse of identity. It is quieter than that. He begins to notice when he is about to overfunction. He notices when he is scanning a room unnecessarily. He notices how quickly he volunteers to absorb tension. Awareness. Just awareness. And awareness changes the architecture of the psyche. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot fully return to unconscious repetition. One evening, he returns again to his mother's apartment. Not out of obligation. Out of choice. They talk about ordinary things, groceries, neighbors, weather. And then, gently, he says something he has never said before. It was hard for me sometimes. The words are simple. But they shift the air. She looks at him differently. Not as the strong one. As her son. Her eyes fill slightly. I know, she says. And in that moment, something ancient loosens. Not blame. Not accusation. Recognition. He does not need her to rewrite the past. He only needs the truth to be acknowledged. Because the child who stepped into adulthood too early does not demand repayment. He asks to be seen. Driving home, the city feels different. Not softer. More dimensional. He understands now that maturity was not the problem. Premature responsibility was. His strength was real. But it was built around an absence. And that absence is no longer invisible. Which raises a quieter, more unsettling question. If he is not only the stabilizer, if he is not only the composed one, then who else has been waiting inside him all these years? The answer does not come immediately. But for the first time, he is willing to meet it.